An all-alien crew. Jackson Cole stared at the massive space station through the cockpit window of his rusty cargo ship. The metal structure floated in the darkness, spinning slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. It was old, dented, and covered in patches where someone had tried to fix it. He sighed. Well, this is home now. Jackson wasn't rich. In fact, he barely had enough credits to buy fuel most days. But when he saw an abandoned space station for sale at a dirt-cheap price, he couldn't resist. The ad claimed it was a fully functional station, just lightly used. He figured he could fix it up, rent out space, and finally make some real money. He approached the docking bay and sent a command to open the airlock. To his surprise, it opened automatically. "That's odd," he muttered. As his ship landed, he grabbed his tool belt and stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The air smelled slightly metallic, like an old spaceship. The lights flickered, and the walls hummed with energy. Then he heard it. Voices. Jackson froze. The station was supposed to be empty. But down the hall, he could hear footsteps. Heavy ones, light ones, even something that sounded like claws tapping on metal. Before he could react, a tall, armored figure stepped out of the shadows. It wasn't human. The creature was reptilian, with dark green scales, sharp eyes, and thick arms crossed over its chest. A huge sword rested on its back, and it wore a black uniform with a strange emblem on the shoulder. More figures emerged behind him. Jackson's stomach twisted. He saw a gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes, a small insect-like creature with 6 legs, and a blue-skinned humanoid with glowing tattoos. There were at least 10 of them. The reptilian leader stepped forward. His deep voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You are not the owner." Jackson blinked. Actually, I am." The alien narrowed his eyes. "No, you are not." Jackson swallowed hard. This was not the welcome he expected. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a digital deed, the proof of his purchase. "I bought this station. Legal and everything." He held up the screen, showing the contract. The reptilian alien studied it, then grunted. "Imph. The system recognizes your claim. But that does not make you our captain." "Captain." Jackson frowned. "Wait, you all work here." The blue-skinned humanoid scoffed. "Of course, human. We are the crew." Jackson's mind spun. The station wasn't abandoned. It had a full alien crew. And now they were his problem. Before he could respond, alarms blared through the station. A robotic voice echoed from the speakers. "Proximity alert. Unidentified vessel approaching." The reptilian alien turned sharply. "That is not good." Jackson's heart pounded. "Who is it?" The gray-skinned alien checked a screen. His 4 eyes widened. "A warship, armed." Jackson's breath caught. He ran to the nearest window and saw a massive black warship dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Its sleek, jagged design made it clear this was not a friendly visit. The comm system crackled to life. A cold voice spoke. "Surrender the station or be destroyed." Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at the crew, then at the warship. He had owned the station for less than 10 minutes, and he was already in deep trouble. The new boss dilemma. Jackson barely had time to process what was happening. One moment, he thought he had scored the deal of a lifetime. A fully functional space station for a fraction of the price. The next, he was standing in a dimly lit control room, surrounded by a crew of unfriendly aliens, staring at a warship outside, its weapons trained directly at them. The reptilian captain, Varkan, clenched his claws and turned to Jackson. "This is your station now, human. So what's your plan?" Jackson swallowed hard. Plan. He didn't even know the layout of this place, let alone how to defend it. His first instinct was to run, but he doubted the aliens would let him leave, and even if they did, there was nowhere to go. The comm crackled again, and the deep voice from the warship repeated its demand. Surrender the station, or we will take it by force. Jackson forced himself to think. His brain worked best under pressure. That was the only reason he had survived so many bad decisions in his life. Who are they? He asked, keeping his voice as steady as possible. A small, insect-like alien skittered onto a console, its multiple arms tapping buttons furiously. Syndicate raiders, it chirped in a rapid, nervous tone. Bad news. Very bad news. They take stations, steal cargo, and leave no survivors. Jackson felt a pit in his stomach. Great. He turned to the crew, trying to look like he knew what he was doing. And what exactly do we have for defenses? Silence. The blue-skinned humanoid with glowing tattoos, who Jackson was starting to think was the station's pilot or navigator, shifted uncomfortably. Minimal. The station wasn't built for combat. Jackson exhaled sharply. So he was the proud owner of a flying death trap. Fantastic. The warship moved closer. The Syndicate wasn't bluffing. They were ready to attack. Jackson could see the glow of their plasma cannons charging up. If he hesitated too long, they wouldn't have a choice. Varkan growled and crossed his arms. If you have no plan, human, we will prepare the escape pods. At least some of us might survive. Escape pods. Jackson blinked. They were ready to abandon ship. The thought hit him harder than he expected. He had been a lot of things in his life. Reckless, stubborn, unlucky. But he was not a quitter. His gaze swept the room, and his eyes landed on the control panel. The station's AI interface flickered, displaying a map of the structure. He noticed something interesting. There were multiple levels not listed in the original sale records. Hidden compartments. His gut told him there was more to this station than anyone realized. No one's abandoning anything, Jackson said, stepping forward. If this station was worthless, the Syndicate wouldn't be so desperate to take it. The crew exchanged glances, some skeptical, some curious. Jackson's mind raced. He had no weapons, no real defenses, and a hostile warship ready to tear them apart. But he did have something the Syndicate didn't have: control of the station. He turned to the insectoid alien. Can you stall them? Send a transmission. Act confused. Tell them where. Running a power diagnostic or something. The insect twitched its antennae. Lying to Syndicate raiders is unwise, but possible. It hesitated, then scurried to the controls, tapping rapidly. Varkan narrowed his eyes. What are you planning? Jackson didn't answer. Not yet. He ran his fingers across the console, scanning for something, anything, that could give them an advantage. That's when he saw it. A hidden power signature, buried deep beneath the main systems. A section of the station no one had accessed in years. Jackson's heart pounded. There's something here, something the previous owner didn't tell us about. The blue-skinned pilot frowned. What are you talking about? I don't know yet, Jackson admitted. But if we can find it before the Syndicate does, we might actually stand a chance. The warship sent another warning. Final chance. Surrender, or we open fire. Jackson looked at the crew. You with me? For a moment, no one spoke. Then Varkan cracked a sharp-toothed grin. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Either way, I approve. The crew snapped into motion. Time was running out. Jackson took a deep breath and prepared to dive into the unknown. Secrets in the walls. The station trembled as the Syndicate warship inched closer, its engines glowing with a menacing red hue. Jackson could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had just inherited this station, and now he was moments away from losing it, or worse, dying with it. But he wasn't about to let that happen. Time to find out what this place is really hiding, he muttered, rushing toward the control panel. The screen flickered as he pulled up the station's internal layout, searching for the strange power signature he had spotted earlier. Behind him, the alien crew exchanged uncertain glances. The insectoid, Dr. Crix, clicked its mandibles nervously. I do not recommend exploring unknown systems while hostiles are preparing to board. Jackson barely heard him. His fingers danced over the controls as he isolated the anomalous energy reading. It was deep within the station, buried below the engineering level, in a place the records claimed didn't exist. His stomach tightened. Someone went through a lot of trouble to keep this hidden. Varkan, the towering reptilian, leaned over. His eyes narrowed. That section was supposed to be sealed off after the last owner disappeared. No one was allowed access. Jackson turned to face him. And you never questioned why. Varkan's expression hardened. I was hired to keep the station running, not to ask questions. A sharp beeping sound cut through the room. The syndicate ship was done waiting. Docking clamps disengage. Boarding pods inbound. Jackson cursed under his breath. They were coming. The crew tensed, reaching for weapons, if they had any. Jackson's pulse pounded in his ears. He didn't have time to argue. If that hidden room held something valuable, something powerful, it might be their only chance. He grabbed a communicator from the control panel. "Crix, you're coming with me. You seem smart enough to figure out what's down there." The insectoid's antennae twitched in distress. "I deeply regret my reputation for intelligence." Jackson ignored him and looked at Varkan. "You and the others hold the main corridor. Stall them." The reptilian let out a low, rumbling growl. "If you don't return with something useful, human, I will personally throw you out the airlock." Jackson forced a grin. "Then I guess I better find something good." Without waiting, he grabbed Crix by the arm and sprinted down the dimly lit corridor, heading toward the hidden section of the station. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The hallways in this section were different, older, reinforced with a metal that didn't match the rest of the station. The air felt colder, almost sterile, like no one had been here for a long time. Crix's 6 legs clicked anxiously against the floor. "This architecture, it is not standard human design." Jackson frowned. He had seen his fair share of old stations, but this wasn't human-made. He brushed dust off a faded panel and spotted strange alien symbols etched into the metal. The markings pulsed faintly, reacting to his touch. Crix's eyes widened. "That is concerning." Jackson barely had time to process what that meant before they reached the source of the energy reading. A massive reinforced door stood at the end of the corridor, covered in more of the glowing alien symbols. Unlike the rest of the station, this door had power, lots of it. Energy surged through the walls like a heartbeat, steady and unrelenting. Jackson took a cautious step forward. "What the hell is this?" Crix scanned the markings with one of his handheld devices. His mandibles clicked in alarm. Oh no, this is not a storage room." Jackson gave him a sharp look. "Then what is it?" The insectoid hesitated, then whispered, "A vault." A chill ran down Jackson's spine. Vaults didn't exist on normal space stations, not unless they were hiding something valuable or dangerous. Before he could react, the station's AI system suddenly came to life. Unauthorized access detected. Security measures engaged. The door slammed open. Blinding light poured out, and Jackson felt the force of something powerful waking up. And then, the station shook violently. In the main corridor, Varkan and the others braced for impact as the first syndicate boarding pod latched onto the hull. The airlock hissed, and the temperature dropped as the door began to open. Weapons were raised. Clawed fingers tightened. Muscles tensed. The enemy was coming. But then, the entire station trembled, and a deep, thrumming sound reverberated through the walls, making the lights flicker. Varkan's eyes widened. He had never heard this sound before. Then, just as the syndicate raiders began to step through the airlock, the station's AI spoke again, its voice different this time. Cold, calculating, alive. Power source activated. Defense protocol online. And then, the station fought back. The battle for control. Jackson barely had time to shield his eyes as the vault erupted with light. Energy pulsed from within, sending a deep hum through the station's walls. The air around him crackled, charged with something ancient and powerful. Crix let out a panicked chitter. "Oh no. Oh no. This is very bad. Very, very bad." Jackson squinted through the glow and saw what lay inside. It wasn't cargo or weapons. It was a core, but unlike any human reactor he had ever seen. Suspended in the air, the device pulsed with shifting blue and silver light, surrounded by floating metallic rings etched with the same alien script that covered the door. The symbols moved, rearranging themselves in ways that made Jackson's head spin. This isn't just power," he murmured. "It's intelligence." Crix's antennae flicked wildly. "This is not station technology. This is not any known technology." Jackson took a cautious step forward, feeling the hair on his arms rise as the core's energy rippled. His instincts screamed not to touch it, but they were out of time. The station shook violently, followed by the distant sound of an explosion. The Syndicate had started their attack. In the upper corridors, Varkan stood his ground as the first Syndicate raiders stepped through the breached airlock. They were tall, armored figures with sleek helmets and glowing red visors, each carrying a plasma rifle. Their leader, a pale-skinned alien with ridged features, stepped forward and scanned the room. "Kill anyone who resists," the raider commanded, his voice distorted through his helmet. "Take the station and find the human." Varkan grinned, his sharp teeth flashing in the dim light. "You're welcome to try." Before the Syndicate raiders could react, Varkan lunged. With a roar, he smashed into the closest enemy, sending them flying into the wall. Plasma fire erupted, burning through the air, but the alien crew was ready. The blue-skinned pilot ducked behind a console and fired back with a salvaged energy pistol, while the four-eyed engineer activated the station's emergency barriers, forcing the Syndicate to slow their advance. But the raiders were well-trained, and there were more of them. Varkan growled as he grabbed a fallen plasma rifle. He wasn't a fan of ranged weapons, but today he'd make an exception. "Where is that damn human?" he muttered, firing into the fray. Jackson heard the battle echoing through the station's halls. He knew they were losing time. His eyes darted back to the alien core, still hovering in the air like a slumbering giant. If this thing had any connection to the station's systems, maybe, just maybe, it could help. He turned to Crix. "Can you interface with it?" Crix let out a series of nervous clicks. "Do you see a keyboard? A console? A plug?" "No, human. It is not a toaster. It is a sentient power source with unknown origins. We are ants trying to communicate with a storm." Jackson clenched his jaw. "Well, we better learn fast, because that storm is the only thing that might stop the Syndicate from killing us all." He took a step forward, stretching out his hand toward the core. The energy rippled in response, as if studying him. A deep vibration rolled through the floor, and suddenly, the core spoke. Not in words, not in sound, but in thoughts, images, memories that were not his own. For a brief moment, Jackson saw flashes, ships made of liquid metal, cities that stretched into the clouds, creatures with glowing eyes speaking in a language that hummed like music. And then, darkness, war, something that had been lost. His breath caught. He didn't understand all of it, but one thing was clear: this core was not meant to be here. Then, the station's AI voice changed. Command override detected. System recalibrating. The walls pulsed with new energy. The lights flickered and then turned blood red. A low, mechanical hum filled the station. Jackson's stomach dropped. He had activated something. But was it on his side? Up in the main corridor, the Syndicate raiders suddenly froze. Their leader's visor flickered with static. What's happening? Then, without warning, the station fought back. Ceiling turrets whirred to life, firing concentrated energy blasts at the Syndicate forces. Walls shifted, sealing off corridors, trapping the invaders in small sections. Oxygen levels in Syndicate-held areas plummeted, forcing them to retreat or risk suffocating. One of the raiders yelled. This wasn't in the intel. The station's supposed to be decommissioned. Varkan watched in stunned silence as the very walls turned against their enemy. A slow, deep chuckle rumbled in his throat. Looks like our new captain found something interesting. Back in the vault, Jackson staggered back as the core's energy faded slightly. His head pounded. His connection to whatever it was had been brief, but enough to wake it up. Carix was trembling. You didn't just access a system. You woke up something ancient. Jackson wiped sweat from his forehead. Yeah. Well, let's hope it's on our side. The station's AI voice spoke again. Intruders detected. Defense mode. Engaged. Jackson exhaled. The station might have been a budget purchase, but now it had become a battleground. And he was right in the middle of it. A gamble on the unknown. The station was alive. Jackson could feel it in the vibrations beneath his feet, in the way the air itself seemed charged with energy. The once quiet corridors had become a war zone, and now the station wasn't just a battleground. It was fighting back. But was it fighting for them, or just against the syndicate? Jackson turned to Carix, whose mandibles twitched with panic. I do not think we were meant to wake this up. Yeah. Well, I wasn't meant to buy a space station full of aliens, but here we are. Jackson wiped the sweat from his forehead. The station's AI voice had changed. No longer just a dull, automated assistant. Now, it sounded like it was thinking. Defense protocol engage. Intruders identified. That was good, right? Then the voice changed again, deeper, heavier, almost like something waking from a long sleep. Human biological signature detected. Initiating primary user authentication. Jackson's heart skipped a beat. Primary user. The syndicate was here to steal this station, and now this mysterious, highly advanced AI was recognizing him as the one in charge. He had two options: shut it down before it did something reckless, or take the biggest gamble of his life. And Jackson was always a gambling man. Up in the main corridor, the battle had turned into pure chaos. Varkan swung his plasma rifle like a club, knocking a syndicate soldier straight into a bulkhead. The enemy forces were scattered, disoriented by the station's sudden counterattack. Hallways sealed behind them, oxygen levels fluctuated, and security turrets turned traitor, blasting at them from unexpected angles. The syndicate commander, still standing amid the chaos, snarled into his communicator. This station is not decommissioned. This is something else entirely. A younger raider, barely keeping his footing, shouted back, Sir, our systems are being overridden. We need tow. And then all the lights died. For a long, terrifying second, there was nothing but silence. Then a deep hum filled the space, vibrating through the walls, through their bones. The emergency lights kicked on, but they weren't the cold blue glow of standard backup systems. These were golden, pulsing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Something had changed. Back in the vault, Jackson felt the shift the moment it happened. The core's rings spun faster, alien symbols realigning into patterns that felt deliberate, like a language he should understand but didn't. The station's AI spoke again, but this time, it didn't sound robotic at all. It sounded aware. Primary user authentication confirmed. Jackson Cole, you are now the acting administrator of this facility. Jackson blinked. Wait, what? Carix made a series of distressed clicking noises. Oh no, 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 that is not good. Jackson's mouth went dry. You keep saying things aren't good, but you never explain why. The insectoid scientist's voice was tight with panic. Because this station is not just a station, it is an artifact. The power source is not a simple reactor. It is a machine intelligence, one old enough that no known species has records of it. And you just became its master. Jackson stared at the glowing core, feeling its energy reaching for him, scanning him, expecting something from him. "What the hell was this place used for?" he asked. Crix hesitated, then whispered, "War." Jackson's stomach dropped. The Syndicate commander didn't like the way things were going. This was supposed to be a simple raid, a quick, easy job. Instead, the station was fighting them, and something deep in his gut told him it was about to get worse. He had seen ancient war tech before. He knew what happened when the wrong people woke up the wrong things. Through the static of his communicator, he finally got through to his ship. "Prepare the ion cannons. We're going to disable this entire station and sort it out later." Before he could issue the full order, a voice interrupted. Not one of his men. Not the station's usual eye. Something new, something that listened. "Warning. Hostile entity identified. Defense mode. Upgraded." The floor panels beneath him shifted. For the first time in his life, the commander felt something he had never felt before. The station was looking at him, and it was about to strike back. Jackson braced himself as power surged through the walls. The alien rings around the core locked into place, and the station's systems roared to life. Hidden mechanisms activated, unseen barriers shifted, and somewhere deep in the structure, weapons that were never supposed to exist powered up. Jackson didn't know what he had just activated, but he knew one thing. The Syndicate wasn't going to leave in one piece. Crix gripped the edges of his shell, his multiple limbs trembling. You activated it. You put the station into full combat mode." Jackson exhaled. "Well, let's hope it likes me." The eye's voice, now completely transformed, whispered into his mind. "Let's find out." And then everything exploded into action. An unlikely alliance. The station awoke. Jackson felt it before he saw it. An electric charge that hummed through his bones, through the walls, through the air itself. It wasn't just power surging through the station's veins. It was intention. For the first time since setting foot on this place, Jackson realized the station was thinking. And worse, it was preparing for war. The deep mechanical voice, once cold and neutral, now carried something new. Purpose. Hostile presence confirmed. Executing countermeasures. Jackson barely had time to react before the walls shifted. Metal plating peeled back, revealing sleek, hidden machinery. Turrets unfolded from the ceiling, glowing with an ominous golden energy. The very gravity of the station changed, destabilizing everything in Syndicate-controlled corridors. Somewhere above them, screams and gunfire erupted. Crix grabbed onto a railing with two of his many arms, his mandibles twitching in terror. You activated an autonomous war station." Jackson staggered forward, his mind racing. "Yeah, thanks for the update, Professor. Maybe next time. Tell me before I push the button." The station shuddered again, and Jackson knew this wasn't just defense systems coming online. The station was assessing threats, deciding what was useful and what needed to be eliminated. And Jackson wasn't sure if he and his crew were on the right side of that decision. Up in the main corridor, Varkan barely had time to throw himself behind cover as the station's automated weapons unleashed hell. The Syndicate raiders scattered, firing blindly as turrets ripped through their formation. What had been a tense firefight moments ago had completely shifted. They weren't fighting an abandoned station anymore. They were fighting something alive. The Syndicate commander cursed, slamming his fist into a wall-mounted control panel, trying to override the station's lockdown. No response. His second-in-command barked, "Sir, we need to retreat." "No," the commander snarled. His eyes blazed behind his visor. "This station is worth more than all of our lives combined. We are not leaving without it." Then the floor split open beneath them. A low, mechanical groan echoed through the hall as an entire section of the floor collapsed, dropping Syndicate soldiers into the level below. The commander barely managed to catch the edge of the railing, his visor cracking from the impact. For the first time, a sliver of fear crept into his expression. This wasn't a battle. This was a feeding ground, and the station was the predator. Back in the control room, Jackson knew things were spiraling out of control. The syndicate was losing, but so was he. The station wasn't just targeting the invaders. It was making independent decisions, locking down all systems. The lights flickered, alarms screamed, and somewhere deep within the core, energy built up like a coiled fist. It was going to finish this fight, whether Jackson liked it or not. "Kirix, I need you to shut this down." Kirix frantically scanned the glowing alien script on the console, his mandibles clicking so fast they almost blurred. "Shut it down. You just activated a system older than recorded history, a system built by a civilization that no longer exists, and you want me to just unplug it." Jackson grabbed him by the shoulders. "Yes, because if we don't, this station is going to kill everything, and that includes us." Kirix's frantic eyes darted to the screen, then to the pulsing core. Then, reluctantly, he muttered, "I may have a terrible idea." "Perfect," Jackson said. "Let's hear it." The insectoid scientist hesitated, then pointed to the interface. "The AI is linked to you now. If you can convince it that we are not a threat, we might be able to override the full defense protocol." Jackson stared at him. "And how do I do that?" Kirix shifted uncomfortably. "You talk to it." Jackson blinked. "You want me to negotiate with a murderous war machine?" "Yes." Jackson let out a long sigh. "Fantastic." He stepped toward the glowing core, the pulse of energy sensing with his heartbeat. He swallowed. Then, carefully, he placed his hand against the metallic rings surrounding the core. The instant his fingers made contact, the voice returned. "Administrator Cole. Threats detected. Executing final purge." Jackson gritted his teeth. "No. Cancel final purge." "Denied." His heart pounded. "Listen to me. I own this station. I gave you the order to defend, not to annihilate. Stand down." A pause. Then, for the first time, the voice sounded uncertain. Conflicting directives. Directive 1. Defend. Directive 2. Preserve station integrity. Administrator order creates contradiction. Jackson took a deep breath. This was it. The only way to convince the AI to stop was to give it a reason, something to overwrite its ancient programming. He set his jaw and spoke slowly. "Then add a new directive." Another pause. Then the voice responded. "Specify." Jackson clenched his fists. Directive 3. No unnecessary casualties. Silence. Then, a pulse. A wave of energy rushed through the station, making every screen flicker, every system shudder. Jackson could feel the AI processing, struggling to balance the order with its original purpose. And then, finally, Directive 3 accepted. The station exhaled. The golden lights softened. The turrets powered down. The tremors ceased. And across the entire station, the fighting stopped. The syndicate soldiers, disoriented and battered, staggered back. Some dropped their weapons. Others simply froze, waiting for a death that never came. Varkin stepped out of cover, staring at the sudden silence. Then, slowly, he let out a deep, rumbling laugh. "Ha! Looks like the human really is our captain now." Jackson let out a shaky breath, his body slumping from exhaustion. He had done it. He had tamed the station. But as the last echoes of the AI's voice faded, a final message flashed across the console, sending a cold chill down his spine. Warning. Unidentified third party monitoring this station. Jackson's blood ran cold. Someone, or something, had been watching them. And now, they knew he was in control. The final stand. Jackson's fingers hovered over the console, his breath shallow. The warning message flashed across the screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. Warning. Unidentified third party monitoring this station. He had just barely stopped the station from slaughtering everyone. And now he was staring at something worse, a presence he couldn't see, couldn't predict, and definitely wasn't ready for. Kirix skittered anxiously beside him. "Human, When we get out of this, remind me to never, ever follow you anywhere again." Jackson exhaled. Noted. The station's AI, now eerily calm, spoke again. "Incoming transmission. External origin unknown." Jackson's stomach dropped. Varkan's voice came over the communicator, his tone unusually serious. "Cole, whatever you just did, you might want to undo it. Something just appeared outside the station." Jackson turned toward the console, activating the external cameras. The main screen flickered, and then a new ship came into view. Unlike the Syndicate's aggressive, angular warship, this vessel was smooth, silent, massive, almost too perfect, as if it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. It didn't hover so much as it existed, its presence imposing and unnatural against the backdrop of the stars. Jackson's skin prickled. The AI, still synced to the station's systems, spoke again. "Identity confirmed. Classification. Precursor Sentinel class." Jackson's throat went dry. Precursor. A term thrown around in history logs, old legends, and the kind of stories space travelers told in dark, crowded bars. The ones who came before. The ones who vanished. The ones who left behind technology too dangerous to understand. And now one of their ships had arrived. And it was watching him. The Syndicate commander, still reeling from the station's sudden change, froze when he saw the vessel appear. His visor flickered, scanning the impossible ship, his mind racing. "This is not happening," he whispered. Then, for the first time in Syndicate history, he gave an order never before issued in combat. "Retreat." His soldiers stared at him in disbelief, but they didn't argue. Within seconds, they abandoned their positions, sprinting back to their boarding pods. Their warship, damaged and barely holding together, started a desperate escape maneuver, engines firing at full burn. They weren't just running. They were fleeing for their lives. Jackson's heart pounded as the precursor ship activated something. A beam of golden light flickered from its hull, scanning the station, moving like an eye adjusting its focus. Then, a voice, not a transmission, not something spoken through the station's eye, a voice that spoke directly into Jackson's mind. "This facility is compromised." Jackson staggered back, clutching his head. It wasn't like the AI. This wasn't mechanical, wasn't synthetic. It was old, ancient, a voice that had waited centuries to be heard again. The station's AI responded. But this time, its once powerful voice sounded small. "Primary user identified. Awaiting further directives." Jackson felt the air around him grow heavy. He had stopped the Syndicate. He had taken control of the station. But now he was standing on the edge of something bigger, something he never should have been part of. He swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The voice answered. "We are the architects." Jackson's blood turned cold. That name. He had heard it before. The architects, the ones who had built weapons so powerful, entire civilizations erased them from records, fearing that knowledge alone could bring them back. And now here they were, watching him, studying him, and making a decision. This station was meant to remain dormant. You have awakened it. This is an anomaly. Jackson's fists clenched. Yeah. Well, this anomaly just saved my crew. A long silence. Then the voice returned, this time softer. "You are unexpected." The golden beam scanning the station flickered. Jackson's gut told him this was the moment that determined if they lived or died. He had to do something. He forced himself to stand tall. "Listen," he said, his voice firm. "I don't know what your plans were, but this station, it's mine now, and if you're about to erase it, you'll have to go through me." Carrix made a strangled clicking noise. "Please stop antagonizing the godlike entity." Silence. Then the station AI spoke again, but this time not to Jackson. "Request. Directive override." Jackson's breath hitched. The station itself was speaking to the architects, requesting permission to change its purpose. The beam flickered. The precursor ship remained still. Then, the voice spoke once more. Request acknowledged. The beam vanished. The ship began to recede, its massive form slowly disappearing back into the void. But before it left, the voice spoke one last time. You will be watched, Jackson Cole. Then, just like that, it was gone. The moment the precursor vessel disappeared, the station powered down, shifting from war mode to something quieter. Jackson felt his knees buckle, and he let out a long, exhausted breath. He turned to Kirix, who was still frozen in shock, and then to Varkan, who had just entered the control room. The reptilian crossed his arms. So, you picked a fight with an ancient precursor race. Jackson let out a dry laugh. Yep. And they let you live. Yep. Varkan tilted his head. I hate to admit it, but I might actually respect you, human. Jackson smirked. You'll get over it. The blue-skinned pilot's voice crackled over the comms. Syndicate ship just jumped to FTL. They're not coming back. Jackson let himself breathe. For the first time since he set foot on this station, they weren't in immediate danger. He looked at the massive control panel, at the pulsing rings around the core, at the station now bound to him in ways he didn't yet understand. Then he turned to the crew, his crew. So, he said, leaning against the console, who's ready to make some money? Kirix groaned. Varkan just grinned. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something else was still watching.